think as far as the storytelling, the narrative goes, I think it's a really moving sort of like coming of age for Yuffie, which is so cool because Yuffie, I always describe her as like a non-character, in the
Right.
original. She's not even anything. She's just there for one side quest, doesn't speak unless spoken to. And for me, it's so cool that they not only made her into like a human in this that, we can understand, who's not kind of like a caricature, but beyond that, they gave her this coming of age story and they built her up and elevated her even in intermission. And for me, it's kind of this coming of age thing with she's acting like a child. Like everything that that is ingrained in her is childlike. Where she's literally singing children's songs, in the beginning of
Yeah.
this, like the Happy Turtle, and singing children's songs, having a good time. Everything is about her. Again, a very childish mindset. She doesn't want help. She doesn't want companions. If she has them, she's kind of making fun of them, poking fun and everything. Again, another childlike thing. Her father is, a prisoner of war now, which is an incredible twist on the original. And she, again, very childish mindset. She can't even imagine seeing his perspective, how he tried to save their country. It's just, yeah, I don't care about him. Refusing to see any other perspective but her own, more childish mindsets. She doesn't want a team. She wants to work alone. Again, even like the editing and everything is almost very childlike. It's very fast paced. It's
Hmm.
zany. It's all over the place from a filmmaking standpoint. It's very exciting. It's very busy. And then by the end, we have this after these horrible things happen to her, much like you said, and this kind of Hansel and Gretel, falling into the woods, and then she goes through a tragedy. She realizes number one, she can't do it alone. Number two, like this is not some fairy tale. She's not a kid anymore, and she's kind of what does she say? I need a team. She's thinking about getting people to join her, and she's no longer a child. She can see from a different perspective now. She's not so selfish, and I guess what impressed me about it was they did all of this in the space of a short DLC, and so quickly. Another standout was Sonon, who's in it much less than Yuffie. He comes in later in chapter one. Is the thing with the Chow Bean during his
Hmm.
death scene? I can't believe, and the whole time I was like, what are they doing with this bean thing? Like, what are they building towards? And then, sure enough, this meaningful death scene, where he bites it, and it's kind of the identity of a ninja, of a shinobi, to be able to have to bite this with a show of your might and strength, and then he can't do it, and it's like, oh, it's time for him to go, man. He's no longer a ninja, and they did that so quick in the space of just a couple little funny gags with people not
Yeah.
biting it, and then all of a sudden it hits you, and it's so sad. And I was so impressed. Understated, by the way. We mentioned execution, right, for Dirge of Cerberus and stuff. Not some big anime soliloquy when he dies, right? He just says kind of like, damn, Melfi, and then he goes. There's no vaunted speeches or anything. Very subtle, very well done. So I can't say enough about it. Fantastic. You said it too, Baby Seal. Juicy DLC. Like the length alone was incredible. The story's great. 10 out of 10 for me. The ending too. I mean, one more thing. The fact that we got a probably 100K budget short film from the 5-second walk to calm from the original
Yeah.
game, where you just go doop, 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 on the world map. We commissioned the film studio Visual Works to give us like a short film of like, what? They are so good to us. Like, we don't deserve this shit. We don't deserve it. They are way too good to us. So
Yeah,
I was just
dude,
saying, like,
the fact that Chocobo Bill takes the right and goes to where the
yes,
Chocobo farm should be, it just the attention was so good.
we don't deserve it. They're too good to like it's one thing to take Yuffie, Barrett, Tifa, and like elevate them to like amazing characters, but Nero and Vice,
Yeah.
like the most, what's the word? Kind of like overplayed. Again, like cool characters, but just like delivered in a very over the top package, we'll say, right?
Yeah.
At the end
Kojima-esque
of the day,
package. Yeah.
yeah, very Kojima. Like very, very over the top, very fun, very playful. I don't think they're trying to be overly serious,
Yeah.
no, it's not bad. It's just the style they chose. But to make them like in the 20-second scene when you first see Deep Ground,
Yeah.
almost nothing is said. And you're just like, ooh, oh, what is this? This is
Yeah.
this is how you do it, man. It's just like dark underbelly. And I was saying to Baby Seal yesterday, like for new players, you got to look at it from their perspective. They see that, and with so few words, they've established, oh, there's more than just Hojo playing around with a couple experiments. Like there's a whole underbelly, dark underbelly of Shinra that we don't even know about, and you don't need to say anything.
Yeah.
Notice when, notice when she said, "Why are you killing your friends?" He didn't go into a 5-minute deep ground is an underground Shinra research. He didn't do it. He just said, "You idiot! I'm going to kill you." You don't need to hear it. You saw that, and it's just so powerful. He's terrifying. The music, everything. Like I have full faith for whatever other suspense chapters we have in the future.
Welcome to SEAL Team 7.
We literally have a class with us today. We have a monk class with us today.
That's right. It is my great honor to introduce Philip Hartshorn. Let's start with him. Why don't you tell us who you are and how many ways you've thought of to kill me?
I am a filmmaker who grew up playing Final Fantasy and inspired me to get into filmmaking with some amazing storytelling back in the FF7 days, FF8 days. And it's super cool to come full circle and now be able to talk about it with the community. And you may have seen me on my main YouTube channel, besides my gaming one, where I've got into many misadventures, such as living as a warrior monk at the Shaolin Temple in China, and getting beat up by monks, which you can see aplenty on that very channel. If you're a hater, please, you'll love this video. And as far as ways to kill you, I would say the one is probably strapping you to a seat and making you watch like Sleep Easy's theory videos till your head explodes from like the epicness of them.
An incredible martial artist and an incredible filmmaker, and he's got, I think, some of the best takes. I said it the first time I had him on that he had some of the first takes that I really like aggressively resonated with as somebody that really enjoyed the remake. I do remember feeling like this extreme vindication when I heard somebody kind of saying the stuff that you were saying, and so it was really fun to watch those right off the bat. And
thank you so much.
Speaking of legends, Ray Kaufman, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do?
I am Ray Kaufman. I've been on here before. We had a great time. So he messaged me, Clark messaged me, asked to do it again. I was like, absolutely. You let me know when. I write novels, I draw comic books, I'm a storyteller, basically. I'm working on some animated projects right now, but more than anything, I'm just a storyteller, and that's kind of what I do on YouTube is like I take my storyteller brain and I use kind of what the game of Final Fantasy VII Remake presents, and I kind of look at it from like a storyteller's perspective and kind of say, okay, where are they going with this? Where are they going with that? So, and I'm just a big fan of the gaming industry. I'm a big fan of JRPGs, and that's just what I love. I cover that on YouTube. I do the storyteller thing, and here I am hanging out with boys tonight. Gonna have a good time.
And you have some really fresh, on the fly, wild takes, and I love it. Let's get your initial impressions of Intermission as a game, like without getting to the ending and all that means. What do you guys think?
Right. So this is where I think they've leveled up as storytellers, and this is where I think hopefully it shows people like what Nomura can do when he's not given like 80 Disney characters, like has to work them all into a cohesive story. He can do this show don't tell, very more sophisticated way of storytelling, and not need to have a very convoluted way of explaining everything. Which, as I always joke, I'm sure we've all done this, the three of us. Try to explain FF7 story to someone who has no idea about it. It's near impossible. Like it's so hard to just explain it because it's so convoluted. I love it. I don't use convoluted as a negative term, but it's a very complicated, in-depth story, right? So I think they're actually taking a step in the right direction by not making it so dependent on understanding all that stuff. It's first about the characters.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I've seen a lot more. I really encourage you guys. Obviously, PS5s are not aplenty right now. I mean, I had to run over Palmer with a Shinra truck to get mine. You got to play this because watching it and stuff, you can't feel how much better this game is. And this is not part 2. This is just, I mean, literally, it's called Intergrade, right? The in between evolution.
Yeah.
So I really recommend, even if it takes a year, get your hands on this. That still is a PS4 game, just kind of like fancied up a little bit. Still using all the assets from the PS4. Like part 2 is gonna look insane. It's gonna be using Unreal 5. It's gonna be bonkers, man. So just wait. I don't think anybody's thinking big enough. Not even me. It's gonna blow us away, man. Nomura and Nojima together, like they are, like taking Sakaguchi out of it, they are the ones who made the story. Like if you look at the original credits of FF7, it says story by Sakaguchi and Nomura, and then like Nojima wrote the script from their story treatment, right? So this is
Yeah.
it. Like this is their characters, this is their story, and they keep like kind of just proving to us again and again, bonking us in the head, like, oh, they really know these characters. Holy shit! Like again, Yuffie. One of my viewers, Jedge, said a beautiful thing. It's kind of like this is the Yuffie that I remember, even though we've never known this Yuffie, right? It's like it's taken from a memory that doesn't exist, but it makes perfect sense. Like that's how good it is, and we have to compliment their sort of caricature Lego characters back in the day that they got that much across with a couple lines of dialogue for Yuffie, and to be able to bring it into this modern storytelling, visual acting space, with lighting effects and everything, acting, motion capture, to be able to retain that while changing her so much, it's just incredible.
I thought it was a really well fleshed out kind of narrative, because it was this whole sandbox they could play with because there's no clear definition of what Yuffie was doing before you meet her. Why was she there? Why was she not around Wu Tai? So they kind of tied it up in a way that makes sense from a narrative standpoint. And also it makes sense in this new deviation they're taking because Wu Tai in the game in Remake is different than the Wu Tai we know from OG Final Fantasy VII. It's not a tourist trap anymore. So like she's part of this new regime, this new government or whatever. And you find out stuff about Godo. They keep
Yeah.
teasing his name.
Yeah.
You find out stuff about Godo, and you're like, oh, that's interesting too. So the lore that was available for you to pick out if you knew what you were listening for in intermission was dope. Like I was like
Yes.
blown away by how much just in the throwaway dialogue they gave you. You know what I mean? I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, and my brain was picking stuff out. As I'm sure Sleep Easy and you guys were too.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
But I thought the handling was great. The synergy system was friggin' amazing.
Uh-huh.
I was playing it and I'm replaying it and I'm having so much fun playing through it again, like understanding how to properly play it now as opposed to just like staying in synergy mode and just doing this attack the whole time. Like
Right.
knowing how to properly play it now is a lot of fun. And the way they integrated, no pun intended, or pun completely intended actually. The way they integrated the stories and the concepts from Dirge of Cerberus into the
Mm,
story. Because what I've said before, I've said so many times, and I think I've said it to you too, Baby Seal,
Mm-hmm.
is if you look at the compilation, you have to look at it from a standpoint as a storyteller, say, we have these excellent concepts. These concepts are like an 8 out of 10. But some of the execution is about a 4 out of 10. Some of the execution was sloppy in the compilation, but the concepts were excellent. Some
Mm-hmm.
people they put those together and say it's all bad. No, no, no. All the concepts are great. And
totally.
what they did with intermission is what I thought they were going to do with remake, which seems like what they're doing. They're taking these concepts that weren't necessarily executed the way they want to, and they're weaving them back in, and they're going to properly execute them this time. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just beautiful. The stuff
100%.
with Vice and Nero, just a short little bit you
Mm-hmm.
got with Vice,
Oh
and
yeah.
then Nero. What I thought of it, and this I'll stop at this because I ramble. So what I kind of thought of that part, you know how all great fairy tales and folklore have the part where the kids wander into the woods and they know they're not supposed to.
Hmm.
That's what Deep Ground reminded me of. You're on this fairy
Yes.
tale journey, everything, and they wandered into the woods. What happens when you go into the woods in any fairy tale? Dark, horrible shit happens.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They wandered into the woods. And Yuffie got away, Gretel got away, but Hansel didn't. You know what I mean? So I thought that was brilliantly executed. So I just thought intermission as a whole was just a real love letter to the fans, a nice tie over, and Square Enix showing us that hey, we're going to do this thing right. So
Yeah.
that's how I took it.
Right on. What about you, Phil?
I agree with everything you just said, man. It's just so well done, and in a way that remake part one's incredible. It's so enjoyable. It flows so smoothly, and then but to see such an improvement in just an intermission itself is mind blowing. Even to stuff that I wasn't even expecting, like level design,
Yeah.
pacing, the execution of like just the gameplay elements. It was so smooth and so fun. There's no more kind of like janky movement in between stuff. She's so quick. She jumps. She runs across stuff. It's just clean. It's smooth. There's a flow to everything, and I love that. And that's her character, you know.
It addressed some things that I was worried about in the series. It addressed how far are they going to push this in terms of maturity. So like this story both showed this childhood side and portrayed, you know, innocence and growing up, but it also really it did not teeter away from the horror element of Nero. Like I do know that one of the things that I liked the Genova scene in Remake, but there's no way I could feel like I wasn't robbed a little of that horror experience that you have with Genova in the OG. And this made me feel like, well, okay, I raise you waking up to some corpses, to a psychopathic puppeteer that will use your best friend's corpse as a weird plaything for, you know, all eternity. Like it really amped up the level. Like when it was like seven strikes, you know, to kill Sonon, and it was a very brutal thing. But it wasn't only that. It was like they did not cut corners with him, like grabbing him by the face to bring him into his dark dimension. And that not only like addressed my concerns about, well, are they going to be able to tell this dramatic story? It also like alleviated my concerns about these Dirge of Cerberus characters that were conceptually maybe fine, but executed so terribly that I had no interest in seeing them. Nero was awesome. Like I now stand Nero so hard. Like Nero was so good. Like the whole experience of fighting him, the Nero battle theme was just, it was like this visceral, creepy, emotional experience.
Crazed, yeah.
Was, and
I think I said this to you yesterday on the stream. Like,
fighting was definitely great in that scene because, like, you know, before, if you play as, I'm a Square Enix fan, but there have been games where you introduce a scene like that, and then there's just this exposition.
Yeah.
But they wrote it in a way that even if you didn't know who it was, you knew they were bad news, and that's all you needed to know.
Yeah.
You know, they wrote it. It was Kojima-esque. I said in one of my videos, I was like, he's got this Hannibal Lecter drip. You know what I mean? And they weren't playing around with it. They didn't let off of it and just say, hey, aesthetically this guy's terrifying or whatever. They pushed it to 11. They put the pedal to the metal, and they went all in on him. And even in Dirge of Cerberus, when you fight him for the last time, he's got that spider-esque kind of form with his wings and everything, you know. And when he pulled those people up out of the darkness, this Nero is different than Nero in Dirge of Cerberus. This is a younger Nero, a younger, more immature Nero. He's not just answering to Vice. He's basically just playing around with no responsibilities right now. Vice is the one who reels him in. But right now, Vice is like, do your thing, do whatever you want. And now we're seeing full on how crazy Nero can be without any restraints. No gutter bumpers to throw gutter balls. He's totally off the rails. Yeah. And I love that they let him just be horrifying. The music nailed it for me. Like in the boss battle, every boss battle has a different movement to the music, right? There's different movements. Each movement was like almost like a piano concerto, and it was so different than any other boss fight in the games. The music and the tone and the atmosphere really put you in a mind space where you're like, I got to get out of here. I'm not totally. I have to get out of here. And they did that artistically in a way because it was such a juxtaposition. Visually, yes. Control-wise, yes, you're playing the same game. But atmospherically, this is something you have no experience with, and I got to get out of here. And that's how the fight ended. We got to get out of here. You know what I mean? So they take you through that journey. I thought that was brilliantly done.
Yeah, and like it's cool because even during the Scarlet fight, it's still like cool, fun. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, yeah, it's a Gundam, but we can just beat it up with our hands. Great. But then you get to him, like you're not really worried, and then you get to him, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm uncomfortable. What is uncomfortable? Yeah, I don't want to be here. And like the music, like you said, it's like it's not cool. It's like another cool bop for a boss fight. It's like I'm scared. I don't feel good, and like he doesn't feel good, and he's not enjoying himself, and he's saying, he's like, it hurts so much. It's like it's really great. It's really this mood of like,
It's like you go from your favorite
going
aisle of Toys R Us into the abandoned house at the dark end of the street that nobody wants to be in.
yeah. And just the execute, like it's just so well done, and like the visuals are dark and obscured, and like all these particles and darkness and stuff. And yeah, you go from like, I like beating people up, and then like you said, I must escape. This is great. It's a hopeless fight.
And did you all notice too, like his darkness looked a whole lot like Genova's blood.
It looked.
Yeah,
it was.
It's almost the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was the exact same thing. Like they use the same textures, they use the same assets, everything, and so
the stuff coming off of it and the glare. It looked a little bit better because I remember it in 30 FPS.
Right.
Now I was watching 60, so it looked different in that respect, but artistically, it was the same design. And I also love how Scarlet, she talked a lot different to Nero than she did everybody else.
Yes.
You notice that?
Yes.
She was very reverent with him. She was very regal with him. She was like, okay, I'm not going to be a snotty bitch to you.
Yeah.
Wrap this up. I'll be in the office.
Yeah.
But I love that too, because you could tell Scarlet puts on a lot of like airs and arrogance and stuff. You see her alone, there's no show to put on. There's no like meeting with the president and stuff. Like her competition, her corporate competition. There's no yuffie to like kind of be racist to and stuff. And she's just like, I want them to suffer. Like she sounds totally different, and you can tell she's upset. You can tell she's actually upset, and that was interesting because it's kind of like we said. If you think about Dirge Cerberus being actually canon, like if it's gonna be there, Deep Ground exists at this point, right? They're not sealed in from Meteor coming down, right? Like in Dirge, like after Meteor falls. So it would make perfect sense that like if Scarlet was in really bad trouble, she would call in like the most disgusting freaks they've got, like the most experimental soldiers. And the fact that we see that now makes it all cohesive, just like that. This little kind of choice they made. If Deep Ground comes in later or whatever they do, it's like, oh yeah, like for a new player, makes perfect sense. It's all cohesive. So I love it.
Yeah.
They exist, so use them. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think stood out for me and for a lot of people was combat. And what that means for the future. I mean, it's a big deal. Like, Yuffie's combat Yuffie's combat, and I said this last night on your stream actually, is what Yuffie's combat felt like to me is if they had the remake people oversee Final Fantasy 15's combat, because the throw retrieve mechanic works a lot like Warp Strike, but good. Like I don't know, it's like what I wish that whole game felt like. And the other thing that I think it establishes is the ability to make aerial combat work in a system that doesn't have a jump button. And because for reasons that maybe just are personal to me, I don't want a jump button in Final Fantasy VII. And so, but there's a problem. It's hard to have good aerial combat without the ability to jump. Well, say no more. We've got you. Like the way the way they had that trace was so good, so well. The lock system worked so good. It was so intuitive. You felt great on your own. And then when you switch into hard mode and the difficulty spike changes, and then you realize that that Sonon and synergy and all that stuff is incredibly important to making the game work. And then things like synergized limit breaks, and your brain just breaks apart. Like, I cannot wait for the inevitable combination of all these different characters, to have their weird little limit breaks. And then, it broke open the skies.
Just thinking about the possibilities, right? Because I talked about this the last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
What I want is like this, and we saw it in the calm travel sequence. Like this feeling of actually traveling together. Like, and actually, we've never seen that in the original. It's just like cutscenes, they talk. We've never seen them camp together. We've never seen stuff like that. So picture this: they could do something where it's like camp scenes we're hanging out. You get to walk around camp. Picture 15, but expanded. You get to walk
Mhm.
around camp and like talk to Tifa, talk to Aerith, talk to Barrett, and maybe like as you develop your relationship with them in this like sort of mini game or something, maybe conversation mini game or something, you get deeper connections that lead to a synergy limit break or something. There could be, more limit breaks, like endless possibilities for this. Uh, and to tie it all together with the gameplay, the story, the narrative, all optional, all extra content, like it's just
The
Absolutely.
combat was just so tight. Like it when I first picked it up to play it, even on normal mode, I had to readjust because I was used to the aerial combat not working as well and the
yeah,
Yeah.
lock not being as tight. I had to take a second and be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is already
it's good. Yeah.
completely different."
Yeah.
You you're talking to a guy. I went through the game 4 times.
Oh wow.
The original 7 remake
Yeah.
just to
Hmm.
get stuff. So I had to reteach my brain. I was like, "Whoa, this works how it's supposed to now."
Yeah.
It was so nice, and the combat made me just dream of what we could get because I feel like Sonnen is going to be Sid's going to be like a reskinned Sonnen in kind of a way
Sure.
as far as
Yeah.
how he operates and works. But I was just like I was drooling at the thought of how Vincent Valentine's going to work, and I was just like, sky's the limit. I mean, he could be the
Yeah.
best of every character.
Yep.
He could be one of those characters that's just so super broken but super fun. And the combat in the game and intermission, you all might agree with me on this. You were talking about 15. I
Yep.
got really, you get to a point where you're spamming Warp Strike,
Oh yeah.
in 15, and it didn't feel great. Felt like I could spam their attacks all day and it would just keep being fun and intermission.
The
And I kind
choreography
of did. Like I
very well done.
spammed like Art of War, synergized Art of War over and over, and it never stopped being fun.
Exactly. Yeah. I think a lot of that is just great animation, it's great choreography. Like it's just so polished. Again, just for a DLC, like part two. And I want you guys to think too, like
Yeah. Not even you. And you guys are probably, apex big thinkers when I think of like people that have got just like very like level 11 type stuff going on. You guys are definitely up there. So, Ray, have you had a chance to fight Vice yet?
No, not yet. It's on my list of things to do. Like
oh,
I want to save him for last because that's the thing I'm really looking forward to. Now, I did tell some people in my Discord that it'd be a while before I could fight him and try to beat him. So one of my mods, he was like, "Hey, I can share with you how that fight ends if you want." And I was like, "Go ahead and lay it on me." So I know how the fight ends. I know the big Easter egg at the end of that fight. So if that's what you're getting at,
I mean, kind of, but
but the fight, I've
the fight
seen people
itself,
do the
yeah,
fight. I've seen people do the fight, and I
yeah,
love the fact that they made him incredibly hard to defeat
yes.
because he's supposed to just be like on the level of Genesis, one rung
yeah,
below Sephiroth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
yeah,
should be a complete and total badass and unbeatable.
yeah,
He
Yeah.
should be.
totally,
I mean, it totally makes sense, and I love the fact that he's Emperor Vice the Immaculate. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? He's
yeah,
got that name for a reason
Yep.
among all these like X-Men that Shinra has in the basement. He's like
Yeah.
their emperor. There's a reason he's like Apocalypse or
Mhm.
Magneto. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I love the fact he's got his legs crossed and he's hooked to these machines. He's like, yeah, they want to replicate me.
Yeah, he's
Boy,
chilling.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
And then Nero, as powerful as Nero is, he's just like, oh brother, they have no idea what he has this like savior love for
Yeah.
like this Jesus Christ apostle kind of love for Vice, as powerful as he is. So
Right.
I love what they did with Vice. I love they treat him with such regality, and I think it fits
Mm.
perfectly. But no, I have not had a chance to fight him yet.
well, yeah, and I mean, that's the deal for me is I wanted a super boss, and they didn't shy away from it at all, and um, in terms of like in terms of lore too, like the fight was just kind of it was the best way I think, like it shows me how sensitive they are, how self-aware they are with their compilation material, because the fight was the fight was difficult and it was referential. Like at points in the fight, he pulls out Azul's weapon, and he even starts walking like Azul. His body language changes to Azul, and then same with Rosso. He gets Rosso's the Crimson Sword, and then he gains a more a feminine gait. Everything, like, it's just this. It's a work of art. Like, it's there for the people that really care about that stuff, but it doesn't bog the story down. There's a lot of stuff like that they do that's really less is more, and as you were kind of talking about, like, not needing to dump giant expositional stuff.
Yeah.
This is the way that they still tell stories, is with these details, and Remake showed us that to a bit. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that they are really confident in the product they're making. So one of the things I want to bring up is or talk about is, I think we all had predictions going into this, like, what's this going to cover? And for me, one of the things I was surprised it didn't cover was Avalanche. Like, Avalanche is there, obviously, but I thought we were going to get maybe, explanations for things like Jesse and who took the gloves off of her dead body, etc. And how did Biggs get there, and why is Wedge for sure alive, because he's for sure alive, etc. Things like that, and it's stuff about Rufus, but we got very little about that. And even, like, I think almost every theory crafter was, like, somewhat convinced that there was going to be some for sure proof that Neo would end up being Nelly, and Finn would end up being, Polk, and that Al would end up being Billy Bob. Like, and there would be some exposition of that. The fact that there wasn't, it didn't really disappoint me, but instead of what it did is it pointed me to the possibility, especially because of the Godo detail, that we're going to get a lot more of, the political struggle that is Avalanche in future parts of Remake. And the other thing that actually points me in that direction was the Fort Condor vibe. And we can get to Fort Condor on its own. But what did you guys think? What were some predictions that you made that maybe didn't, that you were surprised they didn't go, or I
thought that. Yeah, I thought that Yuffie was going to be, like, integral to everybody. I had this moment where I was like, wait a second, she's encountering the Corneo lackeys. She's going to be the one who got Tifa to go to Wall Market. She's going to be the one who, took Biggs out. She's going to be the one who saved, grabbed Jesse's gloves, met with Ketchi, whatever. I mean, that was just fun conjecture. I'm not, like, as you guys know, I'm not so deep into the theory stuff. I'm more just, appreciate the story. But yeah, I think that's what I expected more. Yeah. Again, I wasn't, like, married to it, so I wouldn't say I was, like, dead wrong or anything. But I feel I was actually happy with what they did, because I was fine with her not being a part of everything just for the sake of it's this kind of storytelling device where everything has to be perfectly connected is not always the best choice.
No, it can.
Like, everything is perfectly puzzle pieced together. So I think what I like about it is kind of what we were just saying. There's no exposition and everything on that scale. Fun as it is in the Kojima games and everything, like, show don't tell has been the massive strength of Remake so far, part one and this, and we're just seeing more and more of that. And as I said a million times before, the mark of good storytelling in my book is it's easy to digest for people who want to enjoy it quickly, but for people like us who want to dive in and look at every pixel and every detail and every story beat and characterization, we do get deeply rewarded for that if we look into it. But you don't, like, have to do that, or you can't understand it.
Well, as far as, like, predicting stuff, I really thought that Sonnen and Yuffie were gonna snatch Biggs and maybe even Jesse's body from the wreckage and everything.
Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't happen, because there's sometimes when I make a prediction and it'll happen, I'm like, oh, cool. And then sometimes when I make a prediction and it doesn't happen, I'm super excited, because I'm like, I really got no idea what they're doing now. You know what I mean? So as a fan, I don't want to predict everything. I do
Yeah.
it because people like it, and I
Yeah.
enjoy doing it. But it's like placing a bet. You know what I mean? If you win every bet you place, well, it's no fun anymore. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Game's over. Yeah.
So I look at all this as like just place your bets.
Totally.
It's funny because like before I could finish intermission, somebody, because you get YouTube notifications of people comment on your stuff on your phone or whatever, and somebody left a comment, and they were like, it was like 7 minutes and something marked on the video. They're like, dude, you predicted it to a T, to the detail. And I was like, I don't want to look. I'm not looking. I haven't finished it because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know what they were talking about, you know. But it was the way Sonnen died, because in the
Yep.
video I was like, I could see it, him being escaping, and that blood is Sonen's on Yuffie's face.
Yep.
Like he gets impaled by, Nero's wing blades, and
There
he
you
gets
go.
pulled into the darkness where he plays with his catches or whatever. I was just kind of like spitballing, knowing what happens and knowing kind of who's in it. And
Yeah.
and sometimes you have a big swing and a miss, but it's all fun. Like I love not knowing and
Yeah.
having a strong idea and then being like poof. Like I'll have a lot of like fans of other YouTubers and stuff. They're like, well, this guy said this. I'm like, well, we're all right now, but we're all also wrong right now. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That's the fun
Yes.
of it,
Well, I was
I
gonna say,
love the storytelling aspect of doing the predictions.
yes.
One big thing I'm happy they didn't do was I'm happy that, and it's what you all were touching on with Yuffie. Uh, I'm happy that Yuffie didn't have a stake in everything going on
Yep.
because it felt like she was dropped in the middle of this. It felt like you, as the player, through her, through the narrative, were dropped in this chaos that's going on.
Hmm.
You were dropped right in the
Chaos.
middle of the second bombing run. Chaos. You were dropped in chaos. You were dropped in the middle of the second, well, pretty much failed bombing run, right? And everything that's going on with the slums and all the fallout from that, and Shinra looking for these guys, and you can't talk to them and associate. So it was like, I love the unpredictability of what's going on right now. And the whole thing, how do I word this? The whole thing going on with the world itself seems to be in flux.
Mm.
Like, because my theory is, and I don't want to get too much into theory right now because I know we'll get to that, but I feel my theory is as you play through Remake the first time, time is subtly changing. That timeline is subtly changing as you go because the story about Wu Tai changes throughout the game. First, the war is over. Then Wu Tai's still not conceding the war, and then by the time we get to the Shinra Tower, Cloud says, "Well, it's just a ceasefire. That means the war is just on pause." Like we have officially went from the war being over to by the end of it, it's like, "Oh, it's just a ceasefire now." I'm like,
Yep.
"Wait," and like subtle little changes. So I felt like you could feel that fluctuation as you're playing because the tone of the game changes. Once you go into the woods of Deep Ground, you get into Shinra, the
Mm.
tone completely changes. And I love that feeling of fluctuation, of uncertainty, kind of
Agreed.
like, you know, I don't know, like I would think, I've never been in an earthquake, but I would think after an earthquake, you're uneasy like the whole time. Like you're playing a game of basketball or football, a pickup game, there's an earthquake, and then for like the next 24 hours, nothing's certain. That's kind of how it felt when I was playing through it. So I love that I didn't predict everything. I think that's beautiful. And like you said, uh, the they really have leveled up the storytellers from Final Fantasy 15 to now. They have leveled up. I don't know what they've done differently. I don't know what decisions were made. And I'm a big fan of the gaming industry itself. I love the behind the scenes stuff,
Hmm.
Uh, Kazushika Nojima, Tetsuya Nomura, as I consider them two main storytellers on this. Like everybody else is a director or making decisions, but I consider them the two main storytellers in this world.
Right.
They are working in such cohesion right now that we haven't seen before.
Oh yeah.
Like Nojima's story with Nomura's visual storytelling that we talked about last time, Baby
Yeah.
Steel. The little nods and notes to this and that. It kind of reminds me of the Lord of the Rings. You can watch the Lord of the Rings every frame, and Phil, you can test this as a filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Every frame, everything. There's a story in everything in every frame. there's so much history in that world. I feel like that's what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII's world now, and I love it. I'm here for it.
I agree. Yeah, like you know, I know Sleep Easy right now, Baby Steal, they're literally doing, playthrough number whatever the hell for this game and like looking for stuff, and they're still finding so much stuff that they didn't.
I'm not even joking.
So much.
I found something pertinent to what Sleep Easy's working on while I've been talking to you, and I just sent it to him. So that's the level we're at right now.
It's an incredible feat, and it just kind of also proves how young the medium of gaming is as far as like telling stories.
Right.
The fact that, with a controllable camera, you're able to go look for stuff, but then we get the cutscenes, which in the Lord of the Rings way, we still get to pick up that just richly sprinkled frame, with details and the choices they make mixed with our choices. So it's this interactive storytelling, and it's just glorious.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I fully agree. So, okay, we've waxed poetic about the game, and we're hitting the hour mark, and so before we get into what I think everybody's interested in, which is, what happened at the end. Was there any? Do you have any wild? I guess we'll start with Ray because this is kind of his deal. Did you catch any details that got your theory brain just moving and swirling?
Sorry. Yeah. Some of it has to do with that ending, but
yeah.
For me, that ending cinematic where they're traveling together, right? And we talked about the tone shift. I felt like the whole time in intermission, it was Square Enix talking to the fans. Because, there were a lot of people who didn't like, a lot of friends of mine who just hated Remake. And like you said earlier, their voices are justified because it's their opinion. I loved it, and I'm not shy about that. And I felt like intermission the whole time was the developers talking to you directly, saying, "This is where it's going. This is where we're going. This is where we're going. This is where we're going." As far as tone, as far as like what to expect. There's a part where Aerith and she's talking to everybody, and I think it's right as it's starting to rain or as the weather is changing, and she says, "My stomach's in knots."
Right.
What happens when your stomach's in knots? Now that could also tie to
the thing.
what happens at the end. Absolutely does. But I think also what it is, it's the developers telling you it's about to get rough. Like when you're getting into a tense situation in life, the storm is coming. Things are a little uneasy. Your stomach gets in knots. I think they're telling us, hey, this story's about to it's going 0 dark 30.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Dark. Yeah.
And I think that was what they were telling us there at the end. Storm's coming, it's starting to rain, her stomach's going in knots. And the look at Calm, the way it was in the distance as this was happening, and then they slowly start to move that direction. The way the camera panned up kind of reminded me of like Stephen King. It kind of reminded me of like a Stephen King movie. And it didn't show Calm in like a way where it's like, yay, here we're going to Calm. It was like foreboding almost. Yeah. It's like, okay, we're gonna kick off. Now I got goosebumps talking about it with you right now, actually. But like it's almost like they're saying, hey, this is where we're kicking off the second game. You want the story, you're gonna get the flashback. This is where the game turns on its head. Like in the original game, that Calm is where the story turned. That's when you first figured out there's something not right with Cloud. You know what I mean? This Calm is where it's going to happen, like full force. Because what did Cloud do when they were walking together? He looked at Barrett. He was kind of Joe walking along. He smiled. He was like, kind of like in a very throwaway, haphazard kind of way. It's about to go south. And I think in Remake, when it starts going south for Cloud, I think it's going to happen fast. I think it's going to be just like one of those 70-foot water slides, at like Kings Island or something like that. It's going to be wild. And I felt like, without talking about the other thing we're going to talk about, that was the big takeaway for me.
Mhm.
That, and man, I have always wanted to see the battle between Sephiroth and Godo during the war. The just like two samurai masters going at it, Godo having Sephiroth almost taking him, and then Sephiroth battling. But I've always wanted to see this last samurai battle between Godo and Sephiroth. You know what I mean?
Oh, you got to hear my
going at it.
Phil, go for it.
Yeah, so I think we're going to get to see that stuff because they're building this world in a way. They said, Godo's a prisoner of war. Godo, he's a drunk now. He's down and out. It's a totally different Wutai. And as somebody who loves to world build in theory craft, I'm like, man, I can't wait to get to Wutai. If it's game 2, game 3, I'm here. I can't wait to see what's going on. But as far as predicting things or whatever, just the thing I took for intermission was it was setting a tone. And the tone is going to be very dark moving forward. They ended it with the whole Vice Nero thing. That wasn't Vice and Nero, it was just Nero. That's how they ended the game, was Nero and Yuffie barely escaping with her life. And then what does she see? The most horrifying visual we've seen so far with the plate collapsing into fire and destruction. That was horrifying. I said live on stream, I was like, holy shit, that was horrifying. You know what I mean? And she walked right to the edge. Like, it's kind of symbolic, too. You're on the edge. You're right to the edge of basically the end of the world right there. That's where the game 2 is going to start. You're at the edge of the end of the world. That's what's going on. And then they transition into the main party walking. The storm's coming. Aerith's got knots in her stomach. She's tied to the planet, even though she maybe can't talk to it right now. She's still tied to it as a Cetra. Lots of thematic, lots of tone setting stuff going on, and visually, I thought it was very well done. So that's what I'm excited for after intermission, and what we're going to talk about as well.
For all of those in the chat who are just like, who know what Philip is about to pop off about, just know I had no idea. This is not a setup. Nobody knew.
It's a setup. They played us like a damn fiddle. No, yeah, I've been talking about the same thing. It's insane. It's insane, man. I'll say it real quick because I said this on the last show, right? Like, my idea with Sephiroth is that I'm a big fan of the Greek mythos. And I keep comparing it to the Iliad. And if you think about it, one detail I noticed was that Sephiroth has the Masamune, right? Of course. What is the only place that uses Asian-esque weapons in the entire world of Gaia? It's Wutai. Why does Sephiroth have a katana? Nobody else in China, except I guess if we count Vice, in the new Dirge Cerberus era.
That's like a gunblade.
Yeah, it's a gunblade. It's not just like a traditional katana.
Yeah.
So why does he have a katana? Like, when nobody else in the entire world has any Asian, it's all, long swords, European weapons, mixed with modern machine guns and stuff. So why does he have that? And then I said, can you imagine if sort of because Sephiroth is the best warrior on Earth. How do you become the best warrior on Earth? You defeat the strongest warrior on Earth, right? To get that title. So perhaps sort of the Hector to Sephiroth's Achilles, if we're going by the Iliad, was the greatest warrior of Wutai. And it could be Godo, for all we know, right? But, maybe that was his weapon, the Masamune. And, he had this long rivalry in the way, the 10-year war of the Trojan War. Hector and Achilles have this rivalry. And then, of course, he really wants to kill Hector when, Patroclus dies. He really wants to avenge him. But, unfortunately, little does he know, sadly, he's essentially destroying himself as he kills Hector. And he only realizes this later. But, Hector took Patroclus's armor, which was Achilles' armor, right? So he's actually wearing, when they confront themselves, Achilles' armor. So in this beautiful symbolic way, he's killing himself. The visual is him fighting himself in his own armor, right? And he has new. And that's essentially what they could do with Sephiroth when he's so lonely his whole life because he's so powerful. He's so much more powerful than anybody. He's nobody to relate to. And the only guy I could have related to was the wielder of the Masamune. He kills him, takes his weapon, and then just kind of cements his complete loneliness in the world. He has nobody. unless we count like Genesis and those guys, like there's nobody even on his level, right? So I think that would be such a cool thing, and I hadn't even thought about the fact it could be Godo. So I love that spin on it.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's a great. I would love to see Godo, and we're gonna like. There's no way
Yeah.
we're not going to see that whole thing expanded. Which brings me
That's what I
to
always want to see. Is that fight?
yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. We have to see him. I want to see him like slaughtering thousands of people on the field. Like, how do you become known so much as a hero? You have to do that stuff. I would love to see it.
Yeah, I would like because Crisis Core. I mean, Crisis Core was Crisis Core, and it was supposed to depict that part of Sephiroth's career, and you only see him kind of like just like one hit KO Ifrit and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
it would be nuts to see him just turn Wutai into a field of corpses.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's going to happen, but still, like, I like that kind of development. And
can't express enough how crazy it is that the 5-second walk to calm got a short film, probably 100K budget to do that pre-rendered. like It's insane. We don't deserve this shit. Second of all, what we were saying earlier about sort of the layering, this, if you're ever worried about like them kind of going off the rails with this stuff, at least be assuaged with the fact that while it's a lot of sub gifts, holy shit, that's amazing.
Salinel, thank you so much. Oh my god. Thank you so much.
Holy shit. But if you're worried about it, just be assuaged with the fact that the amount of care they're taking, the amount of detail-oriented care they're taking, how well they're planning it, in just the Aerith, analysis we're doing here, what she says when the rain comes down, her stomach is in knots, which is obviously talking about her fate in the original, which is, okay, could be talking about Zack, could be talking about this, could be talking about the church, the kids holding his stomach in the church. Like, the amount of layering and sort of rich detail that's rewarding when you look into it that they put into just that scene, which is completely invisible if you just enjoy the scene. Say, cut off the Zack stuff. It's just a fun little short film, right? You don't even need those details. But the fact that they put them in for us to like dig into for a year or whatever until the next one comes out is just, it's mind blowing. So if you're worried, just be, feel better with the fact that the insane planning they're doing. This isn't, Star Wars 7, 8, and 9 director, script writer roulette insanity where it's like, hey, we'll just do whatever. We'll fix it in the next one. So that's my first. Yeah, it's not like a middle school writing class, exercise like those movies. It's insane. So what we have in this is this great thing, and then like I've said before, this whole ending made me feel good with what I said originally. I feel like the remake is going to be, we get all of our favorite stuff remade, just like part 1, and then at the end we get this awesome extra stuff sprinkled on top. That's like, okay, we never get to fight Sephiroth like Advent Children style, like sword to sword. Besides like the 2-second mind sort of cutscene at the end, we never get that fight. In like a Midgar setting, Sephiroth is the whole gang fighting him. You fight him in this big, Seraph form, this Bizarro form. You don't fight him as a human. So that's awesome. We get that sprinkled on top. But I was actually talking to Night Sky Prince in an awesome DM yesterday. We were talking about the ending, like, holy shit, what do you think? And that's another thing I said is like, man, for a lot of people who don't like the new stuff, you'll probably just like have modders when it's all done, be able to just take it all out. And then you'll just have like a remake that does all your favorite scenes. Take out the Sephiroth fight, take out that scene, just have the calm video, cut off Zack, cut a lot of the new stuff. And it's just nice to see that like we do get to have our cake and eat it, which is what I said right when I finished it, which I still can't believe. You have weirdos like me who just want that for the entire game, like a short film, of a 2-second thing, a segment like that with character studies and just fun stuff and characterization. That we get that plus the theories, plus the stuff we get to dive into. They don't just give us a game and like now you have to wait for the next one. It's they give us this stuff to look into. Here's some cool clues with what's happening next. And for me, it feels like the end of FF7 original. Like when I see these crazy twists and stuff, I'm just like, oh, this is crazy. Like I'm sitting here looking at my friends on the streamer. This is insane. What does this mean? Watching it again because it's like, when you think Sephiroth's beaten and then you go into this, you pass out and go into like a wormhole, different dimension to fight him inside your mind, his real self and stuff. It's like, I don't even know what's happening. This is crazy. I've never seen anything like this. So that's what I get from this. It just brings me to that headspace again of being a kid as well, and sort of the wonder that they can do with Final Fantasy. But the problem is, or not the problem, the good thing is they have the storytelling chops now, like we were talking about, to make it all just cohesive and coherent and make sense and just kind of glued together perfectly.